Brad Olsen has traveled the globe. He's an author and publisher and wide awake to life beyond the status quo. We sat down to talk about it all in this gold conversation.
Hi there. My name is Brad Olsen. I am an author and publisher at CCC Publishing, and I'm really happy to be on the show with you today.
Hey Brad, we're glad you're here. You've come a long way and you started pretty traditionally, like sort of political cartoons and stuff back in high school and college. Can you talk a little bit about the Brad Olsen then?
Sure. Yeah, well, gosh, you did your homework. You researched my life. I started as a political cartoonist in high school, and that went to my next political cartooning gig in college. I've often been a little disturbed by the hypocrisy all around. And what a great way to expose that with cartooning and highlighting it in our school newspaper. And so that kind of got my toes wet with publishing. Really enjoyed seeing my work in print. And then some years later, after I did a 3 year trip around the world, all my travels, by the way, are self financed. I was an English teacher in Japan and then paid for another 2 years abroad. And that was, to me, that was as good of an education as my 5 year double major degree from Illinois State University, because that was really the college of hard knocks. And then when I got back from that trip, I started my publishing business, CCC Publishing, exactly 30 years ago. And so going on my 11th book, and I also publish a lot of other authors. 25 books later, here I am.
Oh my gosh. So you started with, I think, Sacred Places, right? Wasn't that your first sort of series?
That was well, actually the second series. I
Ah,
did some books for another publisher on extreme adventures, and there was Extreme Adventures Hawaii and Extreme Adventures Northern California. And so my very first book, though, was called World Stompers, a global travel manifesto. And that book is still in print. And every once in a while, I'll get a letter from someone that says I read it and went out and did my own trip around the world. And that always makes me feel good that somebody's still using that information. I tell you, there was a period when I was in Australia. I was actually trying to save money. Back then, we were all using traveler's checks and trying to be cash based only, not get into credit card debt. And there was a moment when I was in Australia and I was hitchhiking all the way across from Adelaide to Kalgoorlie, which is near Perth. And I had some friends there for my trip in Europe a couple months before that I was going to see it. And I was out there and I had my backpack on. I thought, wow, this is just the greatest sense of freedom. I've got everything I need on my back. I'm just putting my thumb out and getting a ride across the Nullarbor Plain, and it just gave me this sense of freedom that has always stayed with me. That you really don't need a lot to travel far, and it eventually got me around the world. And then on that same trip, about a year later, I climbed to the top of the Great Pyramid in Egypt. I know you're not supposed to do that. Well,
yeah. How did you get away with
let's just
that?
call it a youthful indiscretion. Well, I was up there on a full moon on the Giza Plateau, and I was walking around the Great Pyramid, and I tried climbing it once and got shouted down. And what are you doing? Don't you see the signs?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was kind of dejected and thought, well, guess I can't do that. And then I got around a corner and I noticed the guards had stopped following me because I was just walking like I was leaving. And so they thought I was just going to go. And then right at that moment, when I saw I was not being followed by guards, they were doing the sound and light show, and the lights were really bright on the pyramid. And I know that there's a effect of the eyes that when you go from really bright to dark, that your eyes don't adjust for 30 seconds or so. And so right at that moment, the light show went down. I thought, no one's following me. This is my opportunity. And I just started scrambling up the side. And about a third of the way up, the lights came on again. So I just kind of tucked in one of the shadows of the blocks and did it to the 2/3 mark. And then finally I made it up top. And you asked what was the transformative moment. And so while I was teaching English in Japan, my very beloved grandfather was very much like a father to me in many ways, but he passed away and I was not able to get back for the funeral. So I'm up there and just meditating on the top of the Great Pyramid. And I kind of said, we called him Pa. I said, Pa, I'm really sorry. I missed your funeral. I didn't even get the word that he had passed until the day of the funeral. And so he came to me and he said, "Look where you're at, Brad. You're at the top of the Great Pyramid. You're living your dream." And so at that point, up until then, I had been pretty much an atheist and didn't really believe in anything. But after that experience, it's like, wow, I think we are really spirits in a human body. Before then, I was in India, and India is called the most spiritual country in the world. And I was becoming very acquainted with reincarnation and the spiritual practices of India, and that too had a very big influence in my life and my philosophy, and actually even in my career trajectory and all I've done, including the 3 books in my esoteric series.
Yeah, that was really the signpost that you had made the shift. I mean, certainly in your writing, I think that was that around 2012, 13?
That's right. When the first book called Future Esoteric came out, Future Esoteric has a lot to do with the ET and the cover up, why it's been held for so long. But I'll tell you, I think this could be the year of disclosure. And it has to do with the three-eye atlas. Well, it's known as a meteor, but other people like Carrie Cassidy insist that it is intelligently driven. There's a probe that rotates around Mars. They're going to send it over towards this three-eye atlas, and we'll have the first high resolution images sent back to Earth. And if it shows that it is artificial and intelligently guided, that it is some kind of spacecraft, we're instantly going to change everything we think we know on this planet on that day. So it could be that disclosure is very imminent.
I mean, I remember as a kid, like looking up to the stars and just, well, I was saying, get me out of here. Like you dropped me off at the wrong place. But, it just seems silly that we were the only life in the entire universe. That just never made sense to me. The Three-Eye Atlas circumstance is really intriguing. And I too, like, I feel the energy is shifting, and I wonder if it's a result of that ship, meteor, comet, whatever it is. Yeah, I'm wondering if that has some effect. And I love that you're digging into that, obviously. So when did that sort of shift? Was it after you dismounted the pyramid in Giza? Is that when things started to open, or what was the shift in that regard?
Always had a very intense interest in anything extraterrestrial, UFO related. From the time I was a little kid, I did drawings of an alien wearing like a NASA suit, but a gray alien head. I just found that picture. But of course, we haven't been given this information. So, like yourself, I just endeavored to find out as much as I could. And the best information I put in Future Esoteric, the unseen realms. And that's to say that many of us have known of this reality for a long time. When disclosure comes, that's basically for the rest of the world, for the rest of the people that really didn't pay much attention to all this, but now it being forced upon us, that you can't really deny the fact that we are not alone in the universe. Higher intelligence are not only out there, but are also here visiting Earth or have already been here. And another aspect of that are the inner terrestrials, that which may be coming from underground bases or giant cave systems. And in my new book, Secrets of Antarctica, I have a whole chapter on the hollow earth or the inner earth, that there may be these cave systems, or even a larger area where it's a habitable environment down there.
Yeah, it feels like we're getting let out of the box, so to speak, because I think the box was getting too small to keep the secret any longer. But speaking of Antarctica, you did actually physically go to Antarctica. Can you describe that experience a bit? I know you're writing the book or you're getting ready to
I'm writing the book,
publish.
Secrets of Antarctica. It starts out a little bit about my trip down there. I took a sailboat down there with 13 others. Yeah, I mean, kind of a real hardcore way of traveling. I'll tell you, Susan, that trip really kicked my butt. That was the hardest travel I've ever done because we had to cross the Drake Passage, which is
Mm,
notorious stormiest seas of the world. And of course, almost all of us got seasick. Fortunately, the captain didn't, and he got our boat to safe harbor, and we got ashore. And boy, had our first shower after 4 days of throwing up, and
mm.
that felt good to join a base called Arktowski. And we were with 11 Poles and 3 Americans, and that was the beginning of this incredible nearly a month on the sailboat till we got back to Argentina in early 2019. Little did we know that later that year would be the beginning of COVID, and then everything would change with that. In fact, they were not doing any trips to Antarctica for about 2 or 3 years after that season, because you can only go from November until March. And so during COVID, all trips got canceled. And so we kind of got in there unbeknownst to us at the time, one of the last trips down there for a couple years.
And would you say, I mean, you've traveled everywhere. Was that one of the highlights? Was that one of the most memorable places you've ever been on the planet Earth?
Certainly it was, just because it was just so different from anything you could experience anywhere. It's a completely frozen continent. It's over 99% covered with ice and glacier. And so it feels like you're just on another planet altogether, like Europa, the frozen moon of Jupiter, or somewhere else, where thinking this doesn't look anything like the other continents because there's no trees or bushes or really anything green there. It's just all ice and mountains and ocean, but a lot of sea life. Of course, penguin colonies all over, and seals and whales that swam under our boat. It was just fascinating in that regard too.
What was the moment of insight there? I mean, you had that tremendous moment of insight in Giza. What was the moment of insight in Antarctica over that month?
Yeah, great question. Really, that we were down there, that we were doing it, because so few people do it. Only, and I did the math, it's 0.002% of humans alive today will ever see the place. So just getting there, and then finally, after the seasickness went away and kind of got our sea legs on the boat, again, it was that sense of freedom, like Australia. Just wow, I'm one of the privileged few that's ever going to be able to see this place. And also dispelling myths like the flat earth, there's no such thing, or ice walls. They're ice shelves. They're just misidentified as walls. They're not walls at all. A wall says it goes down to the surface, the bottom of the sea, and then is a wall built into the earth. It's not. It's an ice shelf, and it's hollow underneath. In fact, we met some scuba divers that were going underneath, scuba diving underneath the ice shelves. I thought, just wow, that's fascinating. I'd love to do that. Talk about underwater archaeology. And there were some shipwrecks there they did, and some other things. But so I guess to answer your question, the moment was really um, going to several of the bases. And as far as I know, I'm the only researcher that's gone down there with the specific purpose of asking if anybody knew about these 3 giant motherships. And I've since been able to identify, I think, at least 2 of them where they're located, because they've been known since the 1970s and called by our intelligence agencies the Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria. And well, you'll have to see the book when it comes out to find those locations and what they look like. And I was also asking about antediluvian civilizations, these pyramids that are poking through, and possibly giants or mega fauna that has been hidden under the ice that's being excavated now. I did not get that answer from any of the people that worked on the 6 bases that we visited, and I was able to speak to people there. But they did tell me some other things. One was at on the Argentinian base, that another sister base of Argentina called the Belgrano 2 had just had a UFO sighting a couple weeks prior. And at first they were very reluctant to tell me about it, but I kept pressing them. And the person who said, "Don't tell them," in Spanish, she went away. And then this guy said, "Yeah, well, another base had this sighting." And then the other thing we found out is that there is this very big no-fly zone near the South Pole. And in my research and speaking with Linda Moulton Howe and her whistleblower named Brian S., I had a long conversation with him a couple months ago, and he flew over the hole in the ice. So he's an eyewitness to it. And this is very important because it's known that Antarctica is the most volcanically active continent in the world, that there are 14 active volcanoes and over 100 geothermal sites. So you have this heat that's coming out of these vents and volcanoes. So you have the propensity to create big under ice domes, but also chimneys where the heat needs to escape. And so my presumption is this hole near South Pole is one of these heat chimneys. Admiral Byrd wrote about it in his diary and flew into it. Russian research has come out that they also knew about it. And that's why we have the US base right there protecting it. And who's at the base but the NSA? No such agency is the nickname, because they do everything UFO related. And no doubt that they're protecting that secret. So Brian S. told me when they had to do an emergency evacuation out of there and diverted over the no-fly zone, that there were cat tracks and snowmobile tracks that went out towards it from the base onto this area that is called an air sampling station. But he did not see any buildings, any outbuildings, any air sampling. That is just the cover story to keep people out of there. Down there is where Admiral Byrd flew in and experienced a very high-tech civilization. So this is what I mean about inner Earth or inner terrestrial civilizations that are right below our feet. You know, maybe contact is, if it's not Three Eye Atlas, it's going to come from one of these very incredible areas on Earth.
And you said that our reality, our experience is going to shift
Yes.
massively once we have disclosure, whether it's Three Eye Atlas or something else. How tangibly do you feel that's going to express itself?
It would be the advent of free energy technology. It would be the advent of re-examining our own civilization, how we can live in peace and perhaps never have war again. It would also show us interstellar travel technology. I mean, it's a complete game changer on every single level we can examine here. And the human race would make this great leap forward. And so I'm very excited that this could be the year of disclosure with Three Eye Atlas, but it could also come from Antarctica. And that's one of my that's the headline on the back of my book is "All Roads Lead to Antarctica." There's no roads that lead to Antarctica, but all roads that make a difference with this kind of disclosure would be revealed if this information were able to come out. So perhaps if Three Eye Atlas is this watershed moment, perhaps we would be able to go back to Antarctica and go down into that hole. In fact, Brian S. said that there's a road that corkscrews down You don't
Mm,
even need to fly into it. You could drive into it.
this is
So
amazing, Brad. This
I'd
is
love to go down
amazing.
there with a film crew. And yeah, we actually have a proposal out there with a venture capital company called VC Cross, and we're shopping around a proposal to raise the money to go down there. I'd be the lead of an expedition, but we have to get permission, and that's where disclosure could be the permission needed to go down
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, absolutely. The linchpin. What is your message to people that have heard of Three Eye Atlas and it brings up tremendous fear in them?
Let's look at this on a positive side, because there is the possibility that we could be looking at that fake alien invasion called Project Bluebeam.
Mm,
Because why is it that this one is getting the lion's share of attention all of a sudden, where there have been many frequent UFO sightings on this planet for decades? Why is this one getting all the
yeah,
lion's share attention? And so Project Bluebeam is this fake alien invasion scenario, and of course that would instill fear in people. But again, even if they try to pull a Project Bluebeam on us with Three Eye Atlas coming very close to Earth in November and December,
yeah,
that if they were going to try to pull something like that off, that would be the time frame. And even Avi Loeb, who is this Harvard scientist, one of the first to bring out the reality of Three Eye Atlas coming into our inner Earth orbit, he he even said that it has malintent. Now, how could you possibly know that? Unless you're part of this larger agenda to try to spring Project Bluebeam on us. So I'm glad you brought that up, Susan, because I would like to say that even if we see something like ships in the sky and they're invading Earth, I would say it's probably fake. And they have the technology to even put voices in our head, the voice to skull technology. Part of Project Bluebeam is not only this fake alien invasion of Earth, which I don't think benevolent ETs would ever consider doing. And besides, if they wanted to capture Earth by force, just 50 years prior and all the history of humanity, you'd have a much easier time before we had high-tech weapons of our own. But to say that they're going to come here and invade us is, to me, it's just ludicrous. So don't give in to the fear, even if they try to do something like this. And even if you're hearing voices in your head, because part of Project Bluebeam is also to use these holograms to project the Messiah in the sky. And by the way, the closest we're going to get to Three Eye Atlas is on winter solstice. So just in about 3 months from now, and that's also the holiday season. You got Christmas right around the corner. And so, what if Jesus appeared in the sky and was seemingly telling us what to do? Go to a FEMA camp or something stupid. I'd say don't go for it. Don't believe it. It's going to be fake. Hopefully, the thing glitches out if they try to do a Project Bluebeam and we're all just going to see the fakery for what it is. But I'm doing a whole bunch of interviews now. In fact, another one with Sasha Stone right after this and Nino Rodriguez tomorrow. And
huh?
this is the big talk right now is what could the possible ramifications of Three Eye Atlas be?
I love how you put in a huge plug for using discernment, just like with Avi Loeb, how can they tell the emotional temperament of this comet or ship or or sentient being, so I really appreciate the fact that you're bringing that forward even with all the experience and all the exploration you've done in the arena, and I think it's imperative. I'm so grateful that you were willing to come on today, and we'll definitely put links into the show notes to your esoteric series, to your publishing label. And you have quite a few authors of note. I think Michael Jaco and Laura Eisenhower. Well, we really appreciate your work and the contribution you're making. Thank you, Brad.
Oh, thank you, Susan. Again, it was a real pleasure speaking with you today. And we'll have to do it again when the Antarctica book comes out or after Three Eye Atlas. We know what that's all about.